Hello everybody. We are continuing with chapter 6, that is tissues. We are starting with the topic 6.2 plant tissues, subtopic 6.2.1 meristematic tissues. First of all, let us talk about classification of plant tissues. Plant tissues could be broadly divided into two groups: meristematic tissue that divides throughout life, permanent tissues that have lost the ability to divide further. They will lose the ability to divide further and will be assigned with some permanent functions. The meristematic tissues which divide throughout their life, they could be categorized into apical meristem, lateral meristem, intercalary meristem. On the other hand, permanent tissues which have lost the ability to divide further have got some assigned functions. They are of two main types: simple tissues which are made up of only one type of cells, complex tissues which are made up of more than one type of cells. Again, the simple tissues could be further subdivided into parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Complex tissues could be subdivided into xylem and phloem. In due course of time, we will be going through each of these tissues one after another. Today, we shall take up meristematic tissues. So, meristematic tissues, it comes from the Greek word meristos, means to divide. Those tissues which have got the capability of division, they are called as meristematic tissues. Coming back to the meristematic tissues, point number 1. It is a plant tissue of thin wall, compactly arranged, immature active cells. The cells are thin wall, they are very compactly arranged. That means without any gap in between the cells, no intercellular space is present. Immature, they are very young and they are active cells that divide and form new cells. So the basic purpose of meristematic cells is to form new cells. Meristematic tissue is also called meristem. We can also call the meristematic tissues as meristem. The cells of the meristematic tissues are called meristematic cells. Again, I am repeating, meristos means to divide. The region or the place where meristem is present can function as growth region, because the cells are dividing, number of cells will increase. So in those regions, growth will take place. So the region where meristematic tissues are present or meristematic cells are present, or the regions where meristem is present, can function as growth regions. New cells produced by a meristem are initially like meristematic cells. That means after division of meristems or meristematic cells, the new cells, whatever are formed, they are exactly like meristematic cells. Now what happens thereafter? Slowly these meristematic cells, they grow in size. After that, they will differentiate. Differentiate means they will modify themselves and finally mature into components of various permanent tissues. That means what? The meristematic cells, after they are formed, they will grow in terms of size. They will differentiate, that means they will modify, and finally they get matured into various components or various parts of permanent tissues. That is all about the meristematic tissues in brief. I have told you about the characters till now. Let us go further. This is the typical picture of a meristematic tissue. You have a cell wall, thin cell wall. It is made up of cellulose. You have a prominent nucleus. You have cytoplasm, which is very dense. These are the three features you will observe in case of meristematic tissue. One is the cell wall, which is thin. The other one is the nucleus, which is prominent. And the third one is the cytoplasm, which is very dense. Coming back to the characteristics of meristematic tissues again. Cells of meristematic tissues are very active. As I have told you, they have got dense cytoplasm, thin cellulose walls. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. It is a complex carbohydrate and it has got a prominent nucleus. Nuclei is plural. If you see the figure once again, you will see cell wall, which is thin, made up of cellulose, prominent nucleus, and cytoplasm, which is dense. Now the question is, in case of meristematic tissues, you won't find vacuoles. What is the reason behind? Let us see. Why meristematic cells lack vacuoles? Meristematic cells divide frequently and give rise to new cells, and hence for this reason they need dense cytoplasm and thin cell wall. Their main purpose is to divide frequently. So for that reason they require a dense cytoplasm and they require a thin cell wall. Now what if vacuoles are present? Vacuoles are, you see, empty spaces. For that reason, vacuoles cause hindrances in cell division. They will act as obstacle. Why? Because it is full of cell sap. The sap present within the vacuole or the fluid present within the vacuole is called cell sap. This cell sap will act as hindrance in the process of cell division. Vacuoles causes hindrances in cell division as it is full of cell sap. Because the cell sap is present, it will provide turgidity and rigidity to the cell. The cell will become turgid and the cell will become very rigid. So that will act as a hindrance in the process of cell division. So meristematic cells do not need to store these nutrients as they have compact shape. The cells are very compact. So in case of meristematic cells, they do not need to store the required materials, whatever are to be stored. They are stored in the cytoplasm. So they do not need them. As such, meristematic tissue cells or tissues, they lack vacuoles. Let us go further. Types of meristematic tissues. If you look into this figure, you will see the location of various meristematic tissues. First of all, apical meristem. Apical meristem, basically it is present at the tip of root or shoot. Intercalary meristem, it is present in the intercalary region, little bit apart from apical meristem. And coming back to lateral meristem, it is present on the sides. This is their location. By now, one after another, we shall see each of these meristems. Types of meristematic tissues. First of all, apical meristems. It occurs at the growing tips of stems. At that point, we call it as shoot apical meristem. And roots, we call it as root apical meristem. That means if the meristem is present at the tip, we call it as shoot apical meristem of the stem, and if it is present at the root tip, we call it as root apical meristem. Now what is the function? It produces growth in length of the shoot and root. That is called as the primary growth. So lengthwise it is going to increase because of the presence of apical meristem. Lengthwise it is going to increase. Growth in length of shoot or root wherever it is present. right? That is all about apical meristem. Let us go to the intercalary meristem now. The meristematic tissue that remains embedded within the permanent tissue, mainly between two nodes. This group of meristematic tissue, it remains embedded between the permanent tissue. This side also permanent tissue, this side also permanent tissue. In between the permanent tissue, the intercalary meristem, it remains embedded. The meristematic tissue that remain embedded within the permanent tissue, mainly between the two nodes. This is one node, this is the other node. In between the two nodes, it is remaining embedded, and on the two sides, you will have permanent tissues. They remain in leaf base. This is the base of leaf. That is the lowest position of the leaf. They remain in the leaf base or at the lower internodes of growing stem. If you talk about the internodes, which group of internodes? At the lower internodes of the growing stem. In between the two nodes, that region is called internodes. At the lower internodes of the growing stem. When the stem is growing, if you consider a growing stem, in the lower internodes, this group of intercalary meristem is present. Now, how they are formed? They are formed because some meristematic zones are left behind by the stem during apical growth. They are formed because of some meristematic zones are left behind by the stem during apical growth. So, apical growth mainly takes place because of apical meristem. From the apical meristem, some meristematic tissues are left behind. Those left out meristematic tissues, they form the intercalary meristem. If you go to the previous slide, this is the apical meristem. So during the growing time, what happens? Some amount of meristematic tissues, they are left behind. This one, this one, this one. This group of meristematic tissues which are left behind during the apical growth, those group of meristematic tissues are called intercalary meristem. Let us go back to this slide. So that is all about this meristematic tissues. I repeat once again, the meristematic tissue that remain embedded within the permanent tissue, mainly between the two nodes. They remain in the leaf base or at the lower internodes of the growing stem. I have already explained these points. They are formed because of some meristematic zones are left behind by the stem during apical growth. Now, what is the function of intercalary meristem? Is to initiate lengthwise growth of the plant. Now, lengthwise growth of the plant, first of all, we have seen in case of apical meristem. So here also, because of intercalary meristem, it initiates lengthwise growth of the plant in addition to the primary meristem. Primary meristem means we are talking about apical meristem, right? So apical meristem was towards the tip. So in addition to the apical meristem or the primary meristem, this intercalary meristem also will contribute to the lengthwise growth of the plant. Now, these intercalary meristems in due course of time, just like apical meristems, they will grow, they will differentiate, and they will modify, and they will become permanent tissues. That means they will form various components of permanent tissues. Here in this figure, basically it is an intercalary meristem shown only in case of monocot stem. You will find this one in case of monocot stem only. Let us go to the next slide. It is again about intercalary meristem. I have given a few explanations once again. Intercalary meristem is the left out part of apical meristem, that already I have explained. It occurs in the intermediate position, that is at the base of leaves, base of internodes, and below the nodes. This is the base of leaves, base of nodes, and in the internodal region. In these regions they are present. Intercalary meristems, they are capable of cell division. They grow, they allow for rapid growth and regrowth of many monocots. Exclusively in case of monocots you find intercalary meristems. Intercalary meristems at the nodes of bamboo allow for rapid stem elongation. This is the position of intercalary meristem. So that will allow the rapid elongation to take place in the internodal region. Intercalary meristems at the nodes of bamboo allow for rapid stem elongation, while those at the base of most grass leaf blades allow damaged leaves to rapidly regrow. Sometimes what happens here, the intercalary meristem may be present here at the base of the leaves. Supposing these leaves are damaged, because of this again the leaf can regrow. I'll repeat these lines once again. Intercalary meristems at the nodes of bamboo allow for rapid stem elongation, while those at the base of most grass leaf blades allow damaged leaves to rapidly regrow. This leaf regrowth in grasses evolved in response to damage by grazing herbivores. The grazing herbivores, they eat away the parts of leaves or the leaves. So what happens? Those parts or those leaves, they regrow because of the intercalary meristem. That is all about the intercalary meristem. We push over to the last meristem, that is lateral meristem. Now lateral meristem, where it is present, if I show you the slide, previous slide, you will understand they are present on the lateral sides, lateral meristem, right? It occurs in the sides of both stem and roots. It is responsible for increase in diameter or girth of stem and root, that is secondary growth. Increase in diameter or increasing in girth is called secondary growth. So what happens is that because of intercalary meristem, the girth or the thickness is going to increase. It is basically of two types, vascular cambium and cork cambium. Here you will be able to see, this is the position of vascular cambium. It is placed in between the xylem and phloem, right? So because of this vascular cambium, what happens? Secondary xylem and secondary phloem will be formed. That is responsible for secondary growth because of vascular cambium. And cork cambium, it is formed above the cortex. This is the cortex. Here the cork cambium is formed. And from the cork cambium, another group of secondary tissues are formed. That is called cork. So lateral meristem, because of this, is basically responsible for the growth in thickness, which is called as secondary growth. That means increase in diameter or growth in terms of girth of the stem will take place, right? So in this class we have talked about the meristem, its characters and the various types of meristems. That's all for the day. Thank you.